Most receivers are defined by their numbers. Total receiving yards and scoring touchdowns dominate the discussion surrounding the league's best pass catchers. But when you only look at the numbers, you can miss some of the most valuable team-first guys that the league has to offer. In 2024, the NFL was forced to pay attention to one of the most drama-free team-lifting stars currently playing. A player who was doubted from the moment he was drafted, only to become the undisputed leader of his team and help them go from a tire fire to a true contender. This is the story of how Terry McLaurin went from being just the 76th pick to an NFL star. Terry McLaurin was born in Indianapolis in 1995. Details of his upbringing have been kept pretty quiet, largely because he wasn't a big name outside the state of Indiana. His Cathedral High School squad won 4 straight state titles while Terry was on the roster, and he approached 1,000 yards pretty much every year while playing receiver and special teams. His contributions were so massive that he was named Mr. Football Indiana in 2013. Terry was just the 28th ranked receiver in the 2014 recruiting class, but he was still a 4-star recruit, and the Midwest took notice. He received offers from Indiana and Cincinnati, but the big school to tap his shoulder was the Ohio State, where he committed for the 2014 season. In order to earn his spot, however, McLaurin had to work out for Coach Urban Meyer and his team twice, with a challenge to catch 200 balls every single day between his tryouts. In college, Terry had to fight for time, being forced to redshirt in his freshman season alongside fellow future pro Paris Campbell. In order to maximize his opportunities once he started playing in his redshirt freshman year, McLaurin played special teams, contributing 7 tackles and a forced fumble while he worked his way towards earning a spot with the receiving corps going forward. He won the national championship game with the Buckeyes in 2015, and although he only managed to get on the field as a special teamer, his role would increase year over year in Columbus. By 2017, his 4th year at Ohio State, McLaurin was named a team captain before achieving a collegiate high point 1 year later in 2018. As a 5th-year senior, McLaurin recorded 35 receptions for 701 yards and 11 touchdowns. His 20 yards per catch led the Big Ten, and while teammate Paris Campbell was the primary receiver, dominating target share and total yards, Terry had at least proven himself worthy of long looks from NFL scouts. After his college eligibility ran out, McLaurin declared for the 2019 NFL Draft alongside Buckeyes teammates Nick Bosa, Dwayne Haskins, and Paris Campbell, among others. As a professional prospect, McLaurin once again didn't jump off the page in terms of production, but his pure athleticism was ranked 3rd out of all receivers at the NFL Scouting Combine. By the numbers, he was the 7th overall receiver in a relatively deep 2019 class, which included stars like DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, and Deebo Samuel. McLaurin was seen as a solid paint-by-numbers receiver who was good in one-on-ones and had good enough traits to beat number 2 corners, but his hands were questioned, as well as ability to make plays after the catch. These concerns caused McLaurin to slip aggressively in the 2019 NFL Draft, with 11 receivers coming off the board ahead of him as every team in the league passed on him at least once. It was in the 3rd round that Terry McLaurin's fortunes changed. Washington had just drafted Dwayne Haskins as their new franchise quarterback and wanted some offensive playmakers with whom he had chemistry. This was the break that McLaurin needed, leading him to be selected 76th overall. Very few teams have ever been as instantly satisfied with a 3rd-round pick as Washington was with Terry McLaurin. As a rookie, he earned a starting spot right away, and already 24 years old, didn't waste any time making his presence known. In his first career game, while facing the rival Philadelphia Eagles fresh off a Super Bowl victory, Terry caught 5 of 7 targets for 125 yards and a touchdown. He then kept the momentum going by becoming the NFL's first rookie in history to catch 5 or more passes and a touchdown in every one of his first 3 games. He cooked the Eagles again late in the 2019 season, catching 5 passes for 130 yards and a touchdown, beginning a trend that would become horrifyingly familiar to Eagles fans. Despite an awful record in 2019, Washington knew they had a gem in Terry. Caught 58 passes for 919 yards and 7 touchdowns as a rookie, leading the team in all 3 categories despite being inactive in 2 games and catching passes from multiple quarterbacks. In 2020, a lot changed in the offseason. Between a team rebrand to the Washington football team and the new head coach in Ron Rivera, Terry McLaurin was immediately looked to as a grounding presence and asked to help right the ship. Once again, he answered the bell. Amidst the chaos, McLaurin was a fantastic receiver for another revolving door of quarterbacks: Alex Smith, a year two Dwayne Haskins, and career backup Kyle Allen. Despite the quarterback carousel, he caught 87 balls for 1,118 yards. While he didn't find the end zone much, only scoring 4 times, his unleashing allowed for a career year from tight end Logan Thomas and a comfy introduction for rookie running back Antonio Gibson, while also leading the Washington football team to their first NFC East Division title since 2015. In the playoffs, a new problem arrived in the form of another quarterback, Taylor Heinicke. But this didn't stop Scary Terry from catching 6 of 7 passes for 75 yards, helping Washington come the closest to beating Tom Brady's Buccaneers that anyone did on their way to their Super Bowl win. At this point, Scary Terry was well known among fans of the Burgundy and Gold, but he was far from a household name. That perception began to shift in 2021 when Washington fielded a consistent starting quarterback for the first time in McLaurin's career. With Taylor Heinicke under center, Terry could continue contributing when called upon. Despite a few quiet games keeping his stats humble, McLaurin still totaled over 1,000 yards in that 2021 campaign, with his highlight games coming in a pair of early season wins. Against the Giants and Falcons in weeks 2 and 4, Terry totaled 17 catches for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. He showed that he could be the primary weapon of an offense if needed, although Coach Rivera continued trying to establish Antonio Gibson more strongly in the run game. The output was a second consecutive 7-9 season, only this time it resulted in a third-place finish in the division. At this point, after 3 years in the NFL and over 3,000 yards to show for it, McLaurin had set his floor, and he was rewarded with a 3-year, $71 million contract extension to stay in Washington. In typical Terry fashion, he quickly repaid this investment by continuing to be one of the most consistent and reliable receivers in the NFL. In 2022, his numbers were almost identical to 2020, with a pair of starting quarterbacks once again stunting the offensive chemistry. McLaurin once again led the team in yards with just under 1,200 of them, and he helped rookie Jahan Dotson develop, even at the cost of his own targets. Terry still had scary games, though, like his 8-catch, 128-yard night against the Eagles and his 105-yard game against the Giants. He was voted to his first Pro Bowl in 2022, despite the newly rebranded Commanders failing to make the postseason again. 2023 was more of the same in Washington, but with all the headlines focused on Dan Snyder's disastrous leadership as the team owner, McLaurin had another great under-the-radar season with second-year quarterback Sam Howell starting under center. Howell struggled to throw the ball to just his own team, but his trust in his receivers was great for Terry, who capitalized on more 50-50 opportunities and had more high-target games as a veteran presence for the rookie quarterback. This season included McLaurin's best games as a pro by the numbers, when he caught 6 passes for a career-high 141 yards and a touchdown. He had 5 other games with 6 or more receptions, once again leading Washington in receptions and yards. Unfortunately, being on one of the lowest-scoring offenses in football will result in a dip in red zone targets, which led to McLaurin celebrating just 4 touchdowns on the year. In 2024, though, everything changed for both McLaurin and the Commanders. Under new head coach Dan Quinn and general manager Adam Peters, the team was rebuilt to support a rookie quarterback, boasting a new defense and improved offensive weapons. The spot they never looked for an upgrade, though? Receiver. Jahan Dotson was traded away, and McLaurin was trusted to be the number 1 option for number 2 overall pick Jayden Daniels. Alongside Daniels, Terry led the Commanders to their best regular season in franchise history. The pair broke out in an upset win over the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 3 when McLaurin linked with Daniels for 100 yards and a touchdown on just 4 catches. For the first time, Terry had 5 100-plus yard games, and his ability to make plays down the field became one of the best in the league. He was also a primary red zone option, catching over double-digit touchdowns for the first time in his career. Even on quiet yardage days, like against the Giants, he was productive, catching a pair of passes for a pair of touchdowns. The Commanders fought for the NFC East and made the playoffs for the first time, largely because of an offense that was unlocked by the combination of Jayden Daniels and Scary Terry. Throughout his career, Terry McLaurin has never been honored as one of the best receivers in the game, but he's managed to be relentlessly consistent despite some critics being right about him. He has struggled with consistent catching, only bringing in 63% of his targets. And while he's been better after the catch than projected, his highest finish in YAC since his top 10 rookie season was 30th in the league. That being said, he has still totaled 1,000 plus yards in 5 consecutive seasons and is one of the most loyal players in the league. He's been excellent in spite of the offenses he's been forced to play in, catching passes from 13 different quarterbacks in his 6-year career. Despite the adversity, McLaurin has never been a diva, never said a bad word about his organization, and even though he was due for a massive contract extension after the 2024 season, there was no building tension between him and the team. The nation's capital embraced McLaurin after he developed into a true star there, and even though most projections don't see him as a Hall of Famer yet, he's currently a top 10 receiver in the league. When all is said and done, McLaurin is going to be in the Commanders' Ring of Honor, especially with Jayden Daniels throwing the rock. And if they manage to make a run at some point, there's a good chance his jersey gets retired when he finally hangs it up. But what do you guys think? Is Terry McLaurin still underrated? How high would you rank him amongst the top NFL receivers? Let me know in the comments.